Hey, Doc Steve here, and I am super excited today because being someone who usually does fact-checking videos, I have a unique situation today. One of a kind, once in a lifetime maybe, who knows? Because today I'm going to fact-check a statement made by multiple politicians, really ever since the last presidential campaign, which is actually false in 6 different ways. That's got to be some kind of a record. I don't know. I wanted to fact check this statement before, but never really had a chance. And now that it's getting repeated again, I felt that now was the right time to do it. So, you ready? Fasten your seatbelts. Here we go. Now, there's many versions of this statement, but here's the version that mostly came out during the campaign and since. There are 13,100 illegal immigrant murderers on the streets today because of Sleepy Joe Biden's immigration policies. Or later in the campaign, Crazy Kamala let in 13,100 murderers during her reign as the border czar. So falsehood number 1, which is probably the most egregious falsehood in this entire statement, has to do with this part of the statement. Sleepy Joe Biden let in 13,000 murderers. Now, 13,100 is a real number. It was the number of murderers on the Immigration and Customs Enforcement's non-detained list as of August 2024, when this number was released to a member of Congress who requested it from ICE. And it reflects the number of convicted murderers that are thought to be in the country that are not currently in ICE detention. It is decidedly not the number of murders let into the country during the previous president's term. The non-detained list was started by ICE decades ago, some 50-odd years ago, and it's gradually been accumulating names during that entire time. It was actually in the upper 12,000 range at the end of President Trump's first term. It seems weird that it should be gaining names all the time if they're deporting criminals, but the fact is our population and our immigrant population has been growing as well, so this list also grows with the population. So even though names are getting taken off the list because ICE is finding people and deporting them, more names on average are getting put on, so the list has been generally growing. And in fact, if Sleepy Joe Biden or Crazy Kamala let 13,000 murders into the country during their term, it would also be true that Sneaky Donald Trump let about 12,800 murders into the country on his time, because that's about where the non-detained list of murders was at the end of President Trump's first term. Now, if President Trump had said that Sleepy Joe Biden and Crazy Kamala had let in 300 to 400 illegal immigrant murderers during their term, well, that would be a little bit more accurate, but that's still not accurate. And that's because of falsehood number 2, which has to do with this part of the statement. Sleepy Joe Biden let 13,000 illegal immigrant murderers into the country during his term. I emphasize the illegal immigrant part of the statement because the non-detained list isn't just about illegal immigrants who've committed crimes. It's about any non-citizens. So it includes people here with a green card, people with a student visa or a work visa, people here under temporary protected status, people who are asylum seekers, pretty much anybody who's not a citizen. I feel like I have to point out this second falsehood because this statement is not just used to deride President Biden's immigration policy, but also as a general slur on undocumented immigrants. Considering that there's probably around 11 million undocumented immigrants and 53 million non-citizens in this country, just using pure average is only about a fifth of the murderers that are here are undocumented, the rest of them probably being in those other categories. So then if the Republicans had said, well, Sleepy Joe Biden and Crazy Kamala let in 300 to 400 non-citizen murderers during their time in office, that would be a little bit more accurate, but it's not accurate yet because of falsehood number 3. Falsehood number 3 has to do again with this part about letting in murderers, because most of the convicted murderers did not come in as murderers. They came in as regular, non-murderous people just like you and me who had kept their noses clean, and they actually committed murder while here and were convicted while here. So the implication that they knowingly let in murderers is false, partly because a lot of people hadn't murdered anybody by the time they got here. And it's actually also false that they didn't let in any known murderers, because if they knew you were a murderer when you got here, you were put in detention. So it'd be more accurate for Republicans to say there are 300 to 400 new murderers loose on the streets due to Sleepy Joe Biden's failed immigration policies. But it's still not accurate yet. And that's because falsehoods number 4, 5, and 6 have to do with 3 different reasons that a person can be on the non-detained list and still not be loose in the country, ready to sneak into your house at night to kill you while you sleep. In other words, there's actually 3 ways that that number 13,000 is an overestimate of the number of murderers loose on the street. Now, there's 2 things you need to get on the non-detained list for murderers. You got to commit a murder and get convicted for it, and ICE has to know about it. But there's 3 ways to get off the non-detained list, and the first is to leave the country. Now, up until this administration we're in right now, ICE has been laser focused on finding the criminals and getting them out of the country. That was the focus during Biden's term and Trump's first term and Obama's and so forth and so on. Quite a bit less so with this administration. If you want to know why I think that, I have another video on that. You can check out the link at the end of this video. But ICE has been very good at that. And if ICE finds a criminal and deports them, they come off the list. However, if a person leaves the country and ICE doesn't know about it, they're still on the list. And especially earlier on, when there wasn't as good electronic coordination between departments, there's a lot of people that probably have left that never came off the list. Now, nobody really knows how many people are in that category, and they stay on the list because ICE wants to find them if they're here, but there's a big chunk of them that aren't here anymore. I don't know about you folks, but I don't lose sleep over this group, because if they left on their own, they probably did so for a reason, and they can't hurt me from Nicaragua or Pakistan or Burundi or wherever. So that's the first way that 13,000 is an overestimate of the murders loose on our streets. But Falsehood 5 has to do with another reason you can still be on that list and not loose in the country, and that's because you might be dead. Yes, the second reason you can come off the non-detained list is because you're dead, but it's not good enough to be dead. You have to be definitively known by ICE to be dead. And especially when you realize that they have trouble finding a lot of these people, there's a really good chance that a lot of people have died and they haven't known about that. So they are still on the list. With respect to this one, I'm a little bit creeped out about a dead person coming into my bedroom at night to kill me. But I think that's more the horror movies I've watched and not the non-detained list. I mean, I don't think I lose sleep over it unless I start hearing like eerie sounds or, get that creepy crawly feeling on the back of your neck or think somebody's watching me. You know what I'm talking about, but not the non-detained list. By the way, as an aside, dead people on the list brings up a cohort that I think we need to think about that we don't have to worry about. There is a cohort of people that are on the list. They're definitely murders loose in this country, but I don't think we have to worry about that particular group. Think about it. If you committed murder when you're in your 50s and this was in the 1980s and you did your 20 years and you've been out for 15 years or 20 years with your nose clean, I don't lose sleep about a 95-year-old sneaking into my bedroom at night to beat me to death with a cane. It's not something I worry about. In fact, if I were ICE, I'd take everybody on that list that's over 80 years old and I'd put them on the whatever list. In other words, whatever. We're not going to worry about those. Now, the third way you can come off the non-detained list is to be detained by ICE, obviously. But this is related to falsehood number 6 and the other reason that there is a lot more names on that list than are actually loose in the country. And that's because being in jail or prison is not a detention that counts. You do not come off the list if you're in jail or prison, which makes sense because ICE wants to keep track of you even if you're in jail or prison so they can deport you when you're out if you're a murderer. And this is going to be a huge chunk of that 13,000. When you think about it, if you've been convicted of murder anytime in the last 20 to 25 years in this country, you're probably still in prison. I don't know about any of you folks, but this group doesn't worry me at all because they got to break out of prison before they're going to be any kind of a risk to us. So this is a third reason that 13,000 is probably quite a significant overestimate of how many murders are actually loose in the country. So probably the most accurate way for politicians to bring up this point would have been to say something like this. During Sleepy Joe Biden's term as president, 300 to 400 non-citizen murderers were added to the non-detained list. But that doesn't really have the same ring as saying Sleepy Joe Biden let in 13,100 illegal immigrant murderers to this country. And it loses even more of its effectiveness when you can basically say exactly the same thing about President Trump's first term. And I say exactly because, President Trump likes his nicknames and Sleepy Joe Biden is one he uses a lot. And I'll tell you, I think we have another sleepy president. And that's not derogatory to me because I'm quite a bit younger than both those guys and I pretty much take a nap every day. Although, to be honest, I'd probably schedule it so it wasn't in the middle of a cabinet meeting. Hey, thanks for watching. Check out the other video posted here, which goes into some of the reasons why I don't think actually this current administration is laser focused on the criminal. Thanks for watching. See you next time.